Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Shed. Yes, it is a shed. Look, I'm Peter. I've been reading science fiction all my life. What I'd like to do with this channel is go through all the HUGO and NEBULA award-winning books since inception of those two different award systems, and just give you a review on those books and build up a virtual ladder where we can place these books and see where we believe they'll rank over time. Now, I've read all the HUGOs and I've read all the NEBULA, plus some of the runner-up and nominees. But it's been a long time since I've read most of them, to be honest. Some of them I read 30 odd years ago. So to get the series started, I want to begin with Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. The reason I picked this book was in 1969, when it was released, it won both the HUGO and the NEBULA award. So we get two birds with the one stone in this particular book. And it's a good one. It's a good one to start the series. So what the book is about is this gentleman called Genly AI, who's been sent as an envoy to this planet called Gethren, or Winter, Gethren as the locals call it, to really encourage the inhabitants and the nations of Gethren to join this conglomerate of planets, this federation of planets called the Ecumen. And Genly is basically brought there to help, foster an understanding of what the benefits that the Ecumen provides and get Gethren to join the nations of the Ecumen. It's written in a linear narrative for the most part, and it follows Genry and also the other main protagonist, a guy called Estravan or Estraven. Now, I say guy, and that's not technically correct, because the Gethrens are unique in the human race, as the world building suggests. They are an asexual being. They're not male or female, and they have a 26-day cycle wherein they're neither male or female. And during the last 4 days of that cycle, they will decide whether they're going to be male or female for that 4-day period, and they can conceive or father children as we know a male or female could do it today. What's interesting about the book is that it tries to, it sort of almost asks the question, what would a society look like if sex was not so prevalent and so, mixed up in all the politics and all the decisions, everything, the way the world operates, basically. And it's done, I think, a really good job of, not being preachy in any way, shape or form. I wouldn't consider this a feminist book by any means. But it's an interesting book. It's a really interesting thought experiment, and it had me thinking about, how many of these decisions and actions and just the way we interact with people is purely based on our sexes. And I think it asks a really interesting question around what would society look like, what would a nation, what would a planet, look like in that sort of scenario. So I think she's done a really good job of, provoking that thought, which I enjoyed. It follows this linear narrative, follows Genry or Genly. The locals can't pronounce L's properly, so they refer to him as Genry, but his name is Genly. So it follows this linear narrative of Genly as he goes through this journey of bringing Gethren to this Ecumen. And the other main protagonist is a guy called Estraven, who used to be a prime minister of one of the nations on the Winter. He was exiled because of his support he was given to Genry. And the book is really, a journey in many ways. It's a journey of Genly, and it's both a physical and an emotional and a spiritual journey in some ways of, both Genly and Estraven brought together in very unforgiving circumstances, and they go through this journey of discovery, of acceptance, and of sacrifice. What I like about it, the writing style is very good. It's a quick read. I think I finished it in like less than a week, and I only spent like an hour or two a day reading through it. So it's not a really thick book. It brings up some interesting concepts during the narrative where you're sort of lost. You think, I'm not quite sure I follow what this particular technology is or this particular attribute. But what she's done really well is she breaks up those narratives with some extracts, either from ancient stories from Gethren or artifacts that sort of help with the world building to give you a further understanding of what the author is talking about, what the actual protagonists are talking about. So I found that interesting. I didn't find myself having to, you know, make sense of what all these technical terms, not that there's many, mind you, but, you know, I thought she did a really good job of just building this world in a way that it wasn't just a whole lot of information dump, but still kept the story flowing. So I did enjoy that about the book. The one thing, I don't know, and I was borderline on this, I was really looking for something to nitpick. And I'll say that there's one journey, you know, the book is really this journey, like I said, and at some parts towards the latter end of the journey, I thought, you know, I get it. And don't get me wrong, it's a good book. And I was sort of saying to myself, I get it. It's a long journey. Let's just get to the point. But that's really nitpicking, right? I would say that if it was long, it was only a paragraph or two where I felt like, okay, I get it. You know, I don't think there's more to reveal in this journey. But look, it's a mild criticism, and only one that I was really looking hard to find. So, you know, the book, interesting concept. It doesn't explore a whole lot of different ideas. It really is just that one main theme, you know, and the coming together of humans, really, of human society. So look, I do rate it. I think it was a good book. I would recommend this book. You know, it's interesting when I think, who would I recommend this book to? And, you know, in some ways it reads like a sci-fi fantasy type novel. So I think it's an awesome book to give to someone who's a, you know, a fantasy reader, who's looking to, you know, who's curious about sci-fi and wanting to sort of embark on a sci-fi journey. I think this is a really good bridging novel that will get you, you know, that sort of fantasy, adventure sort of vibes. It gives those vibes, but also brings into some concepts of, you know, world building and sci-fi that we all tend to love in this genre. Excuse me. Yeah, so I do rate it. I also think, you know, new readers to both fantasy and science fiction would probably appreciate this book. Like I said, it is a journey of discovery in many ways, and overcoming, you know, your own prejudices and, you know, your own prejudices, which I think is a good book. Yeah, The Left Hand of Darkness. I'd probably rate it a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. It's a good book. But look, you know, I did read this book 20, 30 odd years ago, and when I reread it this time around, you know, it was like a new book to me. I really couldn't remember much of it. So I guess with time, the book sort of fades from memory. Like, you know, it hasn't stood the test of time as far as, wow, that's a book I'll never forget. You know, and that's from someone who's read this book, you know, you know, almost 20, 25 years ago, and just having reread it recently. So, but it is a good book, and that's why I reread it, because it comes up in pretty much all the sci-fi lists that you see, you know, top 10, top 20s. You'll see Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness, or The Dispossessed, which I've also got up here, which I will be reading as well, rereading. Are definitely, you know, highly acclaimed, you know, science fiction epics, really. So we will have a board here where we'll place these books in a sort of ladder system, but it's the first book, so I thought there's no real point doing that. But even so, I think I would rack this to start somewhere in the middle, and then as we read through some of these other Hugo and Nebula award-winning books, we'll decide whether or not, you know, it deserves to go up or down that leaderboard as we get reacquainted with some of these books, and you know, we'll take it from there. So look, I hope you enjoyed that. Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness, Hugo and Nebula winning book for 1969. It does bring some interesting concepts. It is a beautifully written book. That I would say. She has a really nice, you know, rhythm to her writing, I think, and also just nice word choices. I did enjoy the book. I thought it was, you know, a nice piece of literature apart from just science fiction. So yeah, thank you very much, and I hope you know, share the word and join me as we start building out this ladder of Hugo and Nebula award-winning books. And with time, I also want to look at Robert Silverberg, and we'll go through maybe a similar ladder of rereading all the Robert Silverberg books over the years. I've read them all, Well, not all of them. You know, for those of you who know Robert Silverberg, he's almost written countless books, but I've read my fair share, and I've got quite a few in my collection, so I would like to go through those and start ranking all the Robert Silverberg books as well at some point in time. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to see how this Hugo and Nebula award-winning table takes life, you know, I would really appreciate it if you give me a like, subscribe, all the YouTubey, booktubey things, spread the word. But I like to be, you know, pretty spontaneous with these reviews, so I've not read any existing reviews on the book, and I want to minimize my edits, so you will see a raw, unfiltered, real personal review on what I think these books are and what they mean to me. So I hope that works. If not, I'm sure we'll tweak it over time as well. But look, thanks for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time in the Sci-Fi Shed.